Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Now Let's Review, and we're going to be talking about a fat tire e-bike. We've been reviewing a lot of these lately, and we're going to tell you why you might want to steer clear next on Now Let's Review. Okay, so this is the Engwe X20 e-bike. It's folding both here and here. We have a lot of stats to tell you about, but did you just want to set the tone?
Yeah, this is not my favorite e-bike, but we do see a lot of e-bikes being sold that are very similar to this in a number of respects. And I gotta be honest, I'm just kind of getting sick of these. I feel like these were very popular and very worthwhile maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But now we're kind of getting into the next generation of e-bikes. And while they keep on adding stuff to basically the frame of what this is, it's not getting any better in my opinion. And maybe we should just dive straight into why I don't like it.
Sure.
So first off, this is a Cadence Sensing e-bike. Now, if you don't know what that is, that basically means that as you pedal the bike, it's gonna detect, oh, you're pedaling, and it should be able to detect how fast you're pedaling. And that should enable the bike to give a correct amount of power to the rear wheel, which will then help propel you forward. That all sounds great in theory, but in a lot of these cheap e-bikes with Cadence Sensing, you do not get what you actually want, what's on the tin.
It's just a on switch.
Right, it's like, are you pedaling? Oh, you are pedaling. I'm gonna give you as much power as I can until you get up to a certain speed, right, and then I'm gonna basically keep you at that speed.
Well, I'm gonna push back a little bit on that, which is I agree with you, the Cadence Sensing on this is nothing to write home about, but they do let you do something I've never seen on a bike before, which is we were able to actually program our 10 speeds. So what I mean is, when you're in speed 1, usually an e-bike just has a preset, it gets you up to, let's say, 5 miles an hour. Then preset 2 gets you up to 9. Here, you can tell it at 1, I'd like to go 4 miles an hour. At 2, I'd like to go 6, and so forth, all the way up to 9.
And you can adjust that using a percentage, which is a little confusing, but you can fine tune it. And I do think that that is a nice part about this bike. It allows you to keep up with other riders that are driving all sorts of different e-bikes.
I think what Jesse's talking about is if you go for a ride with your friend who has, let's say, just a regular bike, right? And they're cruising at 9 miles an hour. But your bike has a setting for 6 miles an hour and a setting for 12. Then you're constantly gonna be struggling to keep in line with your friend. Here, you could take a few minutes to program it and get it to be 9 miles an hour at, say, speed setting 3, and then everything would be nice.
So, I mean, yeah, that is a bit of a saving grace for this bike, but it is a very technically involved step that you have to go through. You have to press the plus and minus buttons and go to the personalization settings and change the percentage. And of course, you don't know what the percentage means in terms of mile an hour. So you have to do all this testing in order to get to a point where it's a bike that you want to ride.
So let's just jump right into the price. I think that that's a big deciding factor here. It's $15.49 very often on sale on their website. I think it's usually $16.99. And so that to me puts it in a good mid-level price range, especially if you're looking at it and going, but Zach and Jesse, it's got suspension here, suspension there, and suspension here, and it's got a second seat, and it folds. So that's why I think we need to talk about those 3 things. The front suspension's fine, nothing to write home about, works. The rear 2 suspensions, I think are kind of, well, first of all, the way I tested this was, I've got a bump that I know very well. It's the bump, my nemesis bump. I always forget about it. I go 20 miles an hour, I hit it, and I almost break my teeth. I hit it today on this bike. And I thought, well, as I was hitting it, my subconscious was like, great, this has 3 kinds of that did nothing. The rear suspension did nothing.
If you're a mechanical engineer, I want you to just take a look at this suspension layout for a second using your engineering head, right? You have a connection point here, which connects it to the seat post. Then you have this suspension component with this floating piece here. And then you have this arm, which comes down here and goes to here. I have never gotten this to move.
And that's the problem. If this doesn't move, the rest of the system doesn't work properly.
So, I mean, I was jumping on the back of this seat to try and get this to compress. It won't compress actually if you look at it. It would want to be in like a tension where it doesn't have any room to go. It'll hit the frame if it were to do that, and it doesn't because it's obviously not designed to do that. So I don't even know what the idea was behind this suspension, but it adds so much weight, and I don't know what you're doing. The other thing too is because the connection between here and here is different, you don't actually get that much suspension travel. No. These suspension components are way too strong.
Well, and pay attention to this for a second. This post goes all the way down without really anything to this. If this isn't going to move, then you're not getting any rear suspension.
And it doesn't much. It has a rear seat, and that could be cool. You could think I could put my child on it, or I could put my girlfriend or my friend on it. Maybe. But let's talk about that. So first of all, you have no place to put your feet if you're the rear passenger.
That's a very dangerous thing. Let me just say, you don't want to put someone on the back of a bike unless they have a place to put their feet. Otherwise, they've got to dangle them, or they're going to stick them into a spoke or something.
Right. There is nothing protecting them from the gears on this side, and you're very close to the pedals as well. And there's nothing protecting you from the tire. It's very dangerous. On a lot of e-bikes that we see that actually care, they will put a piece of plexiglass there. They will put something that will block your foot or your toe from getting caught in the spoke of the wheel and getting torn off.
I think you're talking about like Rad Power Bikes usually does that. Here, they could have put some pegs like right along the frame here, and at least you would have had a known place to put your feet.
I think that you could put seat pegs on this if you really wanted to. I don't think that it's really worth even considering, because here's the other point. Right now, we have the seat set below the minimum level. So there's a bit of paint on the back, and let me just show you where it's supposed to be. The minimum is right there, technically.
Yeah, so can I just sidetrack for a second? If that's the minimum seat post height, it's uncomfortable for me. I'm 5'9", and I lowered it. I think I snuck past that point so that I could ride it comfortably. So I would say if you're shorter than me, this bike is not for you.
Right, and you know, you can get the Engwe, you know, X 24 and 26, but those are going to be even bigger. So this is for a large person, which is great. But the rear passenger, let's just take a look. You're gonna have this seat in front of you.
Well, a person's butt.
And you're gonna be trying to kind of hold on to them. Instead of the motorcycle way, where normally the passenger is up a little bit higher, so they aren't like whacking their head against the back of the rider, they are just gonna be completely just back. You're just gonna have back right in front of you, which I don't think as a rider is very fun, and you have to kind of hold on.
Well, and also because you're underneath them, so you're really shoved into the
and you're kind of grabbing them around their waist. I just think that that's kind of a weird way to do it.
Yeah.
We've seen actual, like the Hovsco Hovcart actually has a cage that you can put around this, you know, style seat. They do it much better, in my opinion, where you can have a child in there and you're not worried about them falling off. Here, you go over a bump, goodbye.
And going back to the suspension, you might be yelling at the screen right now, like, Zach and Jesse, you didn't tune it. We did. We actually sat there, let all the air out. We put air in. We tried a bunch of different things.
It didn't make a difference.
It couldn't make a difference. It might be because this bike can hold a max load of 330 pounds, which is good. And maybe they maxed out the suspension for that. But I mean, we put some heavy rider. I mean, you know, you're
the two of us.
Right. We both hopped on. That's over the max weight, and we couldn't get it to really do its job.
So yeah, I don't understand that.
It comes in black and gray. It comes in 3 sizes, like you said, the 20, the 24, and the 26. This model has a 1,000-watt peak. Don't believe that. 500-watt nominal motor. I gotta say, having tested this going up some just regular hills, barely had the power to do that. I was surprised. I think they geared it for higher speeds as opposed to lower speeds, and so that might be one of its problems.
And this is going to lead into the next point. I'm going to briefly talk about the battery size, but then we're going to get back to the motor. So this e-bike has 2 batteries. It has one in this post here, and it has one in the seat post itself. This actually is removable, and that's the reason why it's so big. There's actually a battery right in the seat post.
I think they had to do that because this is so small that they couldn't get all the battery power into it. So there's 7.8 amp hours and 14.4 amp hours. You get roughly 1 kilowatt hour of battery, which sounds great.
But the problem is that motor, because it is geared for speed and not for any kind of low range, it is extremely inefficient. I was watching the power output
just drop
as I was going 15 miles an hour, and it was drawing about 300 watts.
Wow.
I think that that's a lot for this kind of e-bike. And yeah, I was watching the percentages drop on the battery indicator. We went roughly 1.5 miles in our testing, going a variety of different speeds, and I think that we lost 15% of range, which means that while this bike has a claimed range of 47 miles, in reality, has a claimed range of 10 miles.
Right.
And I also just want to point out that with 1 kilowatt hour getting you 10 miles of range, that is in the same order of magnitude as a Tesla Model 3. A Tesla Model 3 can get you about 4 miles in 1 kilowatt hour, and that is a 6,000 pound car. This is a 100-pound e-bike.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that when I read it. It's 82 pounds without the batteries, 102 pounds with the batteries. So you gotta be careful. Do not hurt yourself picking up this bike. This is what I think is the heaviest bike we've ever reviewed.
And in my opinion, that makes it kind of dangerous. Not only with the lifting, which you're probably going to hurt your back with if you're not careful, but also just riding it. If you come to a stop and it's leaned a little bit more than you were expecting, you have 100 pounds that you now have to write up.
Right.
That's kind of the scary part about a motorcycle, but here you are with this e-bike, which could, hurt you.
So I was surprised that it has a 6160 aluminum frame. It felt like a steel frame because it was so heavy. It takes 7 hours to charge it. That's because it's got 2 batteries. That's a long time, so you're not gonna be able to do a quick charge. It's got hydraulic disc brakes, which is nice. You need them on a bike this heavy, but they didn't feel fantastic to me. It says it can do a 30-degree climbing angle, but like I just said, I tested it on a regular 15-degree hill, and it did go up it, but it felt like that was it. It claims to have 0 to 31 miles per hour. We tested it and got a top speed of 27 miles an hour after we unlocked it. So I guess going downhill you could go 31. And here's the thing, I don't think you should go over 20 miles an hour on this bike just because of the weight and the fact that I don't think the parts and the mechanics are that top notch. I think for this money, for the $1,600 price range, I would go more like something like the Aventon Adventure 2, which is fat tire, bigger wheels, and doesn't have rear suspension, but neither does this. Has front suspension, and I think it's a whole lot more range and a whole lot better build quality.
And has torque sensing.
Right.
I mean, we're moving into a new era of e-bikes. This is from the old era.
Right.
If this were 2018, I would say that this is a pretty decent bike, and I would be kind of excited about it, that it had some power, that it had some, but we're past all of this now. Yeah. I really do think that even in this price range, this is overpriced.
Yeah.
They're adding stuff that doesn't need to be here. It's not doing anything for you because, again, the seat, in my opinion, is too dangerous. The suspension isn't doing anything. It's so poorly tuned. The cadence sensing is a joke.
Yeah.
And just it's all the little details of the cable management to the front headlight to the fact that there's no fenders. It's just like, give me a break. The only it's like, oh great, you have fake leather handlebars. But I don't like the geometry style of this bike. It's to allow you to fold it. And let's just talk about the folding for a second. Super great that it folds, and I'm not gonna fold it completely because it weighs 102 pounds. Yeah. What am I supposed to do with 102 pounds? I mean, maybe you could roll this into your garage and then fold it up so it takes up slightly less room.
To me, the whole point of folding bikes is to get them in and out of a car without a bike rack. But the thing is, every car I know of, you have to lift it in. And so 102 pounds, you need a buddy. And so unless that's your style, you can't go on a bike ride by yourself. So yeah, e-bikes are wonderful, but you need to make sure you get ones that work for you. And I just feel like the whole point of this would be off-roading, doing stuff where there's a lot of bumps. The suspension just isn't real. So, and then, great to have a place for someone to ride on the back if it's a very safe, comfortable way to do it.
Right.
In this case, they didn't design it well.
This bike looks really good on paper. The motor size, the battery size, the 3 forms of suspension, all of this sounds great, but the execution of it is just so poorly done, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I just don't see the point. Go buy the Adventure 2. You're gonna have a much better experience.
Yeah, so we hope that was helpful to you, but let us know down below what you thought, and if you've got comments or questions, and also things that you want us to review, because that's what we're here for, is for you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because it helps us out. The bigger the channel gets, the more stuff we can get to review for you.
We'll see you next time on Now Let's Review.